are transfixed by breasts. Sex, nurture, fertility, they are potent symbols. But surprisingly, there's a lot we don't know about them.
We just don't take breasts seriously enough, and we haven't put enough resources into really trying to look at how they work and what they're made out of.
Breasts are changing, and no one knows why. They're getting bigger, appearing earlier, popping up in places they have no right to be. And they're getting sicker than in any previous generation.
She's been secretly undergoing surgery to remove her breast tissue.
To help find out why, this woman is donating her breast tissue to science.
Oh my God.
And these 10 mothers are offering their breast milk for analysis.
It's pretty terrifying.
I am a little bit worried and anxious to find out.
It makes me wonder what is in my milk.
In a changing world, are breasts trying to tell us something? And if so, what?
They're this amazing kind of sentinel organ.
By the time we do know, it might be too late for our families or our children or ourselves.
We see them even when they're not there, and we know them by many names.
How we call them at home is like the hooters,
Jugs,
Jelly bonkers.
bazookas,
Gazubas.
Avocados,
Twin Peaks.
memories.
Chumbawambas.
buble, or some of them will call like special mangoes.
We just don't take breasts seriously enough, and we haven't put enough resources into really trying to look at how they work and how they function and what they're made out of.
Science writer Florence Williams has devoted the past 5 years to breasts.
The human breast is incredibly unique in the animal kingdom. We get our breasts at puberty, and then we have them our entire adult lives. They're really a defining trait of our humanity.
We are the only species that's evolved to have permanently enlarged breasts after puberty.
In some ways, the breast is this orphan organ because it's our only organ that doesn't have a medical specialty. No one is really out there looking at the breast over its entire lifetime.
In a single generation, breasts have undergone unprecedented changes.
If I look back 30 years ago, a D and a double D was, that's big, but now it's normal. It's just the way that our generations have evolved, I guess.
Carol Rashley has been a professional bra fitter for decades.
Okay, Kat, now let's just check this fit. I look back 30 years and a 12B or C was considered to be fairly normal. Now we look at 12 and 14Ds and double Ds as our normal to fit size. Oh, and your earrings match the bra. How wonderful is that? Nice. Isn't that lovely?
Breasts are getting bigger in almost every Western nation. And it has nothing to do with plastic surgery. In 1989, the average breast volume was 405 millilitres. By 2012, it had almost doubled. But the obvious explanation is fat. The developed world is in the midst of an obesity epidemic.
As women get fatter and men get fatter, their breasts also get bigger.
Breasts are up to 60% fat. We know that thanks to a macabre series of dissections conducted in the early 19th century. Sir Astley Cooper removed breasts from corpses and injected them with mercury and colourful dyes. This revealed that they contain fat, connective tissue, and glandular tissue containing the lobes where milk is produced. So are bigger boobs just because of bigger meals? Is there a link between obesity and bust size?
I think we're getting smaller bodies and bigger cups. This is an F cup. In this market now, we are seeing so many more girls that are E, F and G cups, right up to an H cup.
Over the years, bras have been made with ever larger cups. But the straps, and therefore the size of the back, remain the same. And no one knows why.
Absolutely, breasts are getting bigger. The customers getting a bit younger. You know, 14 was a standard age that we saw coming for their first bra. Now it's probably 11 or 12.
Breasts aren't just getting bigger, they're also appearing earlier. In the past, most girls developed breasts when they were in their early teens.
It was a very exciting moment, like putting on my first bra, which was just like one of those, elastic kind of, triangle of cotton over the front.
Probably about 12 or 13, I think I started growing little ones, yep.
It was quite a bit of an embarrassment talking to my family about it.
That time of your life when everything is changing, it was a big deal.
I think I was quite a late developer, went through puberty quite late, and then I was never very big in the breast department.
For an increasing number of girls today, this rite of passage is starting at just 7.
So many girls are going through puberty earlier. Pediatricians are starting to consider younger ages the new normal.
Puberty is often an awkward time, even more so when it comes early.
It was just something that I thought was just a part of being 7 years old.
Hello, this is my dollhouse that I could fit in. Do you want to see inside of it?
Sure.
Growing breasts set Kayla Hay apart from her classmates.
They didn't go through the same things that I went through when they were 7, when we were that age.
I like this. Oh, you like this?
Yeah. I do remember, going to the store and, having my mom, pick up, training bras and stuff.
A 2010 survey of African American girls showed that almost a quarter had developed breasts by age 7. In Australia, nearly a fifth of girls enter puberty early.
If you go back 100 years ago or 200 years, a lot of girls didn't start puberty until they were, say, 18. And now we're finding that girls as young as 7 or 8 are starting puberty.
Dr. Linda Birnbaum from the US National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences has a very personal reason for finding answers.
My 9-year-old granddaughter has developed breast buds, and this is difficult for a 9-year-old who psychologically and socially is still a little girl when her body starts to change.
Breast growth in puberty is triggered by a flood of estrogen, a hormone produced in the ovaries. Each estrogen molecule fits into a receptor like a key in a lock. Breast tissue contains billions of these receptors.
When your breast senses a hormone, it will respond by doing something. For example, by making the breast bigger, by growing, or by building the mammary gland. So your breasts are really sensitive to these hormone signals.
Could childhood obesity be the trigger for the early flood of estrogen that causes premature puberty? Or is another hidden force at work?
Scientists are looking for explanations for why this is happening. Exposures through food or through chemicals may be mimicking estrogen, and the breast may be responding to those signals.
Breasts are getting bigger and appearing earlier. and not just in females. Joe Moder is one of a growing number of men far from infatuated with their breasts.
You know, jogging, the first thing to go up and down is the, you know, and you see it on a woman, but then it's happening to me. It's like, I guess it makes me feel a bit less of a man because I have these things that like are sticking out, which women have. I've wanted them gone since I can remember, to be honest with you.
Joe has decided to take radical action and see a specialist about having his breasts removed.
Life's short, and if I can remove them and have a different sense and feel more confident, believe that I'm going to feel more confident about myself, so be it.
So your main concern is gynecomastia, large breasts.
Man boobs, bitch
Man
kids.
boobs, yes, right. Yeah. And at that stage, was it the
Dr. Ralph Bright diagnoses Joe with a condition called gynecomastia.
Most of the causes of gynecomastia relate to a hormonal imbalance, so that you either have not enough testosterone or you have too much estrogen, and that estrogen can then feed your breasts and make them a little bit larger. Can I just have a look at your breasts?
I don't show everyone.
Basically, if you just push in with your fingers like that and then squeeze, you'll find you've got a little bit of tissue in there, and it's quite soft. Now, you've got some mammograms. You can see on the top, the female gland tissue is quite large, whereas yours, in fact, is very small.
Yes.
Until recently, male breast reduction was rarely acknowledged. Now it's openly discussed.
It makes sense to look at what men are exposed to if they are developing breasts. We know that breasts do respond quickly to changes in the environment.
Changes to male and female breasts aren't simply cosmetic. Sometimes they signal something much darker and more dangerous.
Breasts were always a big part of my life. Like, I used to do glamour modeling when I was young, and my sexuality was my thing.
Leanda Collins is approaching 50. As she ages, her chances of developing breast cancer increase. Rates of the disease in men and women are higher than in any previous generation.
How are you feeling?
I feel great. I feel wonderful, and I'm very, very grateful for all the support.
Less than 1% of women carry a gene mutation that greatly increases the risk of breast cancer. And some women, like Angelina Jolie, resort to surgery to reduce their risk.
The mother of 6 says doctors told her she carried a faulty gene, known as BRCA1.
Which meant she had a frighteningly high chance of getting breast or ovarian cancer, a disease which killed her mother.
But she's been secretly undergoing surgery to remove her breast tissue.
Leanda doesn't have a family history of breast cancer, but neither do 99% of women who develop the disease. In the hunt for causes, some clues are emerging.
Part of the vulnerability of the breast is the fact that the breast changes many times.
Breasts are incredibly dynamic. They're always changing.
Every month, the body prepares for pregnancy. Surges of estrogen trigger milk duct growth. Breasts develop not once, but hundreds of times between puberty and menopause.
I like to think of breasts almost like Caesar's army. Every month, they're making camp, they're breaking camp.
And anytime you have cells rapidly dividing or differentiating, there's an opportunity for mischief.
Leanda has had changes in her breast tissue that place her at higher risk of breast cancer. And recently, she lost her husband to prostate cancer. So her risk is bad news for the whole family.
To see my kids lose their dad was just heartbreaking, just absolutely. It just, you know, we're still a tight family, but, you know, he was our dad.
Yeah, I don't know, it's very scary, but, you know, we went through, you know, Dad having cancer and stuff, so it's not unfamiliar for us.
To make completely sure, she is leaving her family to undergo a preventative mastectomy.
It was hard to say goodbye to them because they're worried, you know. Well, the little one just wants me there, but the older two are worried. Yeah, they're worried about it. This is an operation that I've chosen to do. I don't have to do it. I've chosen to do it because I want to avoid getting cancer. It doesn't matter how scared I get now. It's for the long run is what I'm doing it for, you know?
Leander has agreed to donate a small portion of her breast to science. Will it yield any clues to the modern mysteries of the breast? What surprises will the researchers find when they look at what lies beneath?
The doctor said, oh, she's having some growth, breast tissue growth. And I said, really? Okay, this is pretty young, 7 years old.
I think my mom thought that it was really weird or really early to be doing that.
Kayla Hayes' early puberty may have ramifications later in life.
We really know that the greatest risk factor for breast cancer is your lifetime exposure to estrogens. So if these start earlier, you may be at increased risk of developing breast cancer later on.
Are the bodies of girls like Kayla producing more estrogen? Or is there something else that could be sending estrogen receptors into overdrive?
I think people are just beginning to ask that question, and it's not necessarily an easy question to ask.
It's hard to get to the bottom of. It doesn't look like there's kind of one smoking gun, but it's important to ask these questions, and it's important to try to find out why.
There are clues if we know where to look. In 2007, researchers in Colorado reported on 3 boys who had begun to grow breasts.
These boys were developing breasts. In one case, a very young child. In another case, I guess he was 10 years old.
Diana Zuckerman is from the National Research Center for Women and Families, a Washington lobby group.
There could be many reasons for that. Some kind of hormone disruption seemed very likely.
Pediatricians were stumped. After repeated interviews with the boys' mothers, an unlikely suspect emerged.
There was a tree oil as well as a lavender oil, and in some cases it was some kind of healing balm that the mom was putting on the child.
Researchers had found the culprit. Lavender molecules, which have a similar shape to estrogen molecules, were binding to receptors, fooling the boys' bodies into growing breasts.
And then they found that when they stopped using these products, the breasts disappeared and the boys went back to normal. You know, certainly I don't think anybody would have thought lavender oil was dangerous in any way.
Many plant molecules are now known to lock into estrogen receptors. They are called phytoestrogens. If nature can produce compounds that trick our chemical signaling system, can the modern industrial world do the same?
There are estimated to be at least 80,000 chemicals in commerce in the United States, but we know that many chemicals have not been tested. We really don't know what their impact on people or the environment might be.
Chemical suspects are everywhere. We carry food and drink in plastic containers. Flame retardants stop toys, clothing and couches from catching fire. Studies in animals have raised questions about the safety of many of them.
Most of the exposure we're getting from the flame retardants is this stuff is getting into dust in our houses and in our offices, and therefore it's getting into us.
The chemicals are inhaled, ingested, and in some cases, absorbed through the skin. From the intestine, they enter the bloodstream via the liver. From there, some circulate through the body and are deposited in fatty tissue.
We are all living in a soup of industrial chemicals. Some of them may be harmless, and some of them may not be. The fact is, we haven't been looking for what these chemicals do to our health, and it's something we need to start doing.
So is there any evidence that man-made chemicals can mimic estrogen? In 1973, cattle in Michigan were accidentally fed grain that contained a flame retardant called PBB. Daughters born to women who had eaten the flame retardant-laced meat started puberty significantly earlier than their peers.
You can have a molecule of something like a pesticide that looks like an estrogen molecule, and it can fit into the cell receptor as though it were a key, unlocking a chain of events.
There is a bit of surprise that some of the things we're producing do mimic what goes on in the human body.
Could industrial chemicals contained in flame retardants, fragrances, and pesticides be affecting breast health? Many researchers think so, but most regulatory authorities consider the theory as just a storm in a teacup.
Whether they're affecting us or not, we really don't know. It's very hard to prove that a particular substance is causing a particular effect, because there are lots of other things around that could cause that effect.
Professor Ian Ray has advised government agencies in several countries about chemical risks. A notoriously difficult task.
Is it something else in lifestyle? Is it something just in the air, that sort of level of pollution that people are not responsible for themselves, but which they're exposed to? And that turns out to be very difficult to prove.
Joe Moda works as a fragrance consultant. Perfumes contain natural and man-made chemicals. Could one of these be behind his breast growth?
I got introduced to scents quite early. I would have been about 13 or 14. So I don't know. You know, there's food for thought, or scent for thought.
Scents contain a group of compounds called phthalates. Phthalates have been shown to mimic estrogen in laboratory mice.
I think if they weren't really that good for you, why would there be such an abundant array? But no, I haven't really given it that much thought. Do you think I should?
Turn 90 degrees for me.
For his own self-esteem and perhaps his health, Joe has taken the tough decision to have his breasts removed.
Since I was young, I've always been curious on what it would feel like to not have excess weight.
You can see that we're starting to suck some fat out now. Once the fat cell has gone, that's the container. He can still put on weight, he can still make fat, so when he puts on weight in the future, he'll store it in other containers in other parts of his body. It's looking like you're not going to have any breast tissue left.
Is breast tissue especially attractive to industrial chemicals? It turns out that many man-made compounds are lipophilic. They just love fat. And breasts are full of fat. Joe has had over 700 millilitres of it removed from his chest, the equivalent of almost 2 female cup sizes.
So it's a little bit more than I expected, actually. I didn't think we'd get quite that much fat out of you.
Wow.
So could an estrogen mimic be the cause of Joe's man boobs?
Wow.
Whether it be something that mimics estrogen or whether if it's something that actually increases a conversion of testosterone to estrogen, all of these exposures are possible, but to actually track them down and to identify them is extremely difficult.
Leander Collins has agreed to be part of an unusual experiment to see what lies within the human breast.
Now that I'm here in this hospital, I'm trying to pretend it's not happening.
In a bid to head off breast cancer, she's about to have a preventative double mastectomy.
Bring the tape up a bit more, please, Richard.
The main reason for me is my kids. I really just don't want to put any more harm in their life.
Enough?
Leander will provide a sample of breast tissue which will be analysed to see if her fat cells are storing potentially dangerous chemicals.
So there's the breast tissue there.
After a 4-hour surgery, the tissue is rushed to the Australian National Measurement Institute for analysis.
We're going to test the tissue for brominated flame retardants. They are a set of compounds that were added to plastics and other materials to reduce the flammability of them. So they were used in a lot of consumer goods.
In addition to the flame retardant PBDE, Gavin Stevenson and his team will analyse Leander's sample for a chemical found in non-stick cookware called PFOA.
As far as I'm aware, this will be one of the first times breast tissue has been tested for these compounds in Australia.
The analysis is a complex process. Leander's breast will not reveal its secrets for several weeks. If breasts are storing man-made chemicals, then another question demands an urgent answer. Could those chemicals be making their way into breast milk?
You know, I mean, obviously we all know breast is best, right?
I'm all about convenience. I think it's just the convenience factor for me. I mean, it's always there, it's the right temperature, it's what we were meant to do, I guess.
It was a painful experience to begin with, but the benefits far outweigh the negatives.
Breast milk is full of fat. So could it be a magnet for fat-loving chemicals? Toxins can diffuse from breast fat into the neighbouring glandular tissue where the milk-producing lobes reside. They can also pass directly from the bloodstream, joining the fats, proteins, vitamins and carbohydrates that make up breast milk. From there, it's just a short journey to the child. Could nature's superfood be contaminated? In a revealing experiment, these 10 women will put their milk to the test.
I am a little bit worried and anxious to find out.
It makes me wonder what is in my milk.
Over the next 3 weeks, each mother will collect and freeze a portion of her milk.
I mean, I like to think I'm a reasonably healthy person, but I'm always shocked at how much, you know, plastic you just come into contact with every day.
The milk will be tested for target chemicals, such as PCB, polychlorinated biphenyl, used in electric equipment and a suspected carcinogen. And DDT, used as an insecticide until it was banned in many countries after being linked to diabetes, breast cancer and retardation.
Breast milk is full of fat. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's a very nutritious food for babies, but it is a fatty solution, and that's why it's there. It's not a water-based solution, it's a fat-based solution, and so that's why these chemicals can be there.
The samples will be tested by Professor Peter Sly and his team from the National Centre for Environmental Research and Toxicology in Brisbane.
These are the breast milk samples from the 10 mothers. We can see here that the fatty fraction has separated and is now floating on top.
The analysis is a painstaking process. The mothers face an anxious 4-week wait before learning the results.
It's pretty terrifying. But I still think, you know, I'm sure that no matter what's in there, it's better than formula.
But is it? In 2008, author Florence Williams decided to put her own breast milk to the test.
I started to really look at my house, and I started to look at the food I was eating, and everything became potentially threatening. What's in that toothpaste? What's in my couch? What's in my roofing tiles? And is it getting into my breast milk? And so I sent a vial of my breast milk to a lab in Germany. I was living in a small town in the Rocky Mountains. I was eating a lot of organic food. I was not smoking. I was doing the things you're supposed to do as a pregnant woman. So I thought my breast milk would be relatively pure. I was really surprised to learn that, for example, for flame retardants, I had higher levels than the average American woman.
Florence's milk also contained PCBs and DDT.
I wanted to find out if it was still okay to keep breastfeeding my baby. And so I asked a lot of questions. What did these substances mean for her health? Was it okay if she was still exposed to them?
The short answer? No one knows for sure. In 2013, British obstetricians warned pregnant and breastfeeding women to avoid packaged foods, new cars, furniture, paint fumes, perfumes, and deodorants. And scientists at Stanford University warned that heating food in plastic containers could increase the risk of miscarriage by 80%.
When I saw the press coverage, I thought, wow, this sounds really, really outrageous. You're torn between some responsibility to say to people, look, we think there might be a problem here and you'd be wise to avoid it, and causing undue anxiety by alarming people, maybe unnecessarily. And that's a personal judgment you just have to make. There's no rules, no laws.
So in today's industrial world, is breast milk actually safe for babies? Many researchers believe that whatever the risks of contamination, it's nature's natural superfood. Breast milk, it turns out, is astonishing stuff. Just as science is discovering toxins in breasts, it's revealing the wonder of the milk they produce. Ava Cordwell was born almost 3 months premature. That means she has no defense against bacteria invading her gut, triggering a potentially deadly inflammation.
Scared, obviously, very scared. But I know I'm in the best hospital. I've went through this before.
Ava's mother, Jacqueline, has already given birth to 3 stillborn babies.
I've had so many losses. It's like, when you talk about wanting a baby, I've wanted her for so long, and it took us so long to get her. Like, literally brings me to tears that she's here. I really couldn't imagine her not being here right now, to be honest.
There is one thing that could reduce Ava's risk of developing life-threatening inflammation by as much as 50%. Breast milk. Jacqueline has had health problems and is unable to breastfeed, so she's relying on milk donated by other mothers.
Honestly, I was like, you know, another woman's breast milk getting to my baby, you know, like emotionally, like, you know what I mean? But then it's like, I can't provide that for her, so why not, you know? And actually, I'm appreciative, and I would thank them for donating that, because people in my situation that can't, at least their baby's still getting the best of the best.
People are beginning to realize the value of human milk. This is a life-saving substance. We have definitely saved lives.
Collecting and screening donor breast milk for germs is not cheap.
In US dollars, we're talking a little over $100 a day to fully feed a baby on human donor milk.
We call this liquid gold.
To Ava, breast milk is more than food. It's medicine.
She gets 4 milliliters, which is 5 milliliters is a teaspoon. So this is a small amount that she gets every 3 hours.
Breastfeeding has been shown to reduce rates of childhood leukemia and diabetes. It may also protect against HIV infection, help fight cancer, and benefit babies' brain development.
We spend many resources and dollars studying things like the health benefits of red wine, and we don't spend nearly as much studying human breast milk. And yet, human breast milk is really the only food on the planet that was meant to be eaten by humans.
Although accepted by the medical fraternity as life-saving, just how breast milk fights disease is a question that's dogged Professor David Newberg.
35 years ago, this was just a crazy idea. What if, what if, what if?
He was initially intrigued by the presence of special sugars in breast milk called oligosaccharides.
What fascinated me when I first entered the field was that this is the 3rd largest solid component in human milk, and yet it's not used by the infant.
So if the babies aren't digesting these sugars, what is?
The vast majority go into the colon, where there's a large number of bacteria which can use them as their favored food. We found that the human milk oligosaccharides actually stimulate those bacteria that are known to be most helpful.
These unique sugars promote the growth of beneficial gut bacteria, allowing them to outcompete harmful species, preventing inflammation and possibly death.
It is like medicine. It provides them a little immunity to help them fight off infections.
In addition to special sugars, breast milk has been shown to contain immune cells, stem cells, anti-inflammatories, and over 700 species of helpful microbes.
Breast milk has such a large number of positive attributes, it's hard to give a definitive list without doing it in writing.
On the one hand, breast milk is clearly best for babies. At least in the short run. In the long run, is it best? We don't know.
The presence of man-made chemicals in breast milk is highly controversial. But all agree that lowering their levels is a good idea. So is there anything we can do to make that happen?
I basically had to live like an old order Mennonite in order to reduce my exposures.
Florence Williams and her daughter tried to do a chemical detox.
So my daughter and I refrained from eating canned food. We refrained from taking baths or showers using heavily fragranced products. I did not ride in the interior of a car for 3 days, so I just rode my bike around.
She was particularly concerned with her levels of bisphenol A, or BPA, a chemical implicated in miscarriage and fetal brain damage. BPA is used to make plastics. In 2012, it was banned in all US baby bottles.
I tried to avoid all food that had touched plastic. So as you can see, we're not left with very much. No one can live like this. It's not enough food.
The detox was brief, but effective.
And then we tested our urine again for these compounds 3 days later. And it was an amazingly dramatic change. My levels for BPA went down about 85%. But I had to live a pretty extreme life for those 3 days in order to drop my levels.
While Florence was able to show a decrease in chemicals like BPA in her urine, it's another story when it comes to chemicals stored in fat. fat-loving, persistent organic pollutants, including some used in pesticides and flame retardants, can take decades to leave our bodies.
They don't break down readily in the environment, and they don't break down readily in us.
I might have gained some of these exposures when I was a child, but they're still in my tissue, and as a consequence, they're now in my daughter's tissues. What I learned was how hard it is to really control these exposures. And I also became sort of resentful that I would even have to.
Of the 80,000 industrial chemicals registered in the US, fewer than 1,000 have been tested for potential hormone-disrupting effects.
Well, certainly in the United States, the way the regulatory system works is that chemicals are allowed to be sold until proven otherwise.
It shouldn't come to this. I can't be my own environmental protection agency. I'd rather just buy mayonnaise that already has safe ingredients in it.
Leander Collins is about to find out what chemicals were lurking in her breasts. And these 10 mothers will learn what they're really feeding their babies. After weeks of waiting, their results are in.
Oh my God.
Jeez, full on.
Leander Collins is recovering well following major surgery. She decided to have both her breasts removed to reduce her risk of cancer.
Oh, it feels really good. It just feels like life's starting to be normal again. Cancer-free. Can you get that one? It's my favorite.
Her tissue has been analysed for toxic chemicals found in everyday products.
Positive. Persistent organic pollutants. Oh my God. Well, it's saying that my breast tissue tested positive chemicals called PBDE and PCBs. Both of these chemicals are what is known as persistent organic pollutants. Rather than being flushed out of our bodies, they attach themselves to fatty tissue like those found in the breast.
Leander's tissue contained traces of PCB, commonly used in electrical equipment. It also contained a common fire retardant, PBDE.
Yes, there are flame retardants found in everybody, which doesn't surprise me at all. In the United States, pretty much every American has a flame retardant level.
Leander's breasts contained traces of chemicals she'd been exposed to throughout her life. Many of them are considered highly toxic. But the concentrations were 95% lower than those found in the average American woman.
America in general is very much a consumer society, and lifestyle factors there may, modern furnishings or else may have something to do with it, but I don't know that it's really well known.
Safe limits are yet to be set for these chemicals in breast tissue.
I suspect that setting safe levels of exposures to these chemicals is reasonably nonsensical, and that we'd be better off if they weren't there in the first place.
What are the health effects? They're unknown, and there is no level that is considered safe to have in your breast tissue. I'm shocked that it attaches to, it just sounds horrible. I think it's going to take a while to sink in. But it's not going to make me happy sitting on a lounge anymore. And plastic toys. Kids suck plastic toys.
These mothers have also put their breasts to the test to find out exactly what we're feeding the next generation.
Jeez, full on. Quite high flame retardants. It's interesting. Couches, cushions, carpets, televisions. Wow. Like my level is here, and that's Australia, so I'm much higher than the average in Australia and Europe.
But look at the US. The US is shocking. Your levels of pesticide banned decades ago, DDT, exceeded the recommended concentration in drinking water. Unbelievable.
Antigone has high levels of the insecticide DDT in her breast milk. DDT was banned a decade before she was born.
It's terrifying. Like, what are we doing to ourselves? You know, I do really think that when we look back at all this, if we get that opportunity, that, you know, we're going to realise, like, we're poisoning ourselves through our own technology.
Every mother in the group tested positive for pesticides and coolants found in electrical equipment. But the levels were well below the closest available comparative measure: the European Union's maximum allowable exposures for chemicals in infant formula.
You actually think that you're doing such a good job taking care of your child, and then you realise that you have like all these things.
They also tested positive for the flame retardant PBDE, linked to liver and thyroid disease, and the chemical PFOA, used in preparing the non-stick coating on fry pans and suspected of causing brain damage in unborn babies. Once again, safe levels have not been set for either compound.
Wow. And it's a bit scary that the effects of these are still unknown, so God knows what they could be doing. But I guess the hardest thing is that as a mom, I feel responsible for passing it on to my baby. But the alternative isn't any better, so I'm just going to continue with it and just hope and pray that I'm doing the right thing, which I think I am. Yeah.
Tests reveal that many industrial compounds have found their way into breasts and breast milk.
People think, you know, breast milk is a pure natural substance, which it is, but it's a product of the mother's body. And, you know, the mothers do have levels of chemicals from the environment in their body, as we all do, and it's not surprising that these are reflected in the breast milk.
No one believes women should stop breastfeeding.
The benefits of breastfeeding so far overwhelm any of these risks that are potential risks. They're not known risks. The benefits are real benefits. They're documented.
Yet, the research does show us that women today, regardless of what's in their breast milk, if they breastfeed, those children are healthier. So it's a really mixed message.
Antigone is planning to breastfeed her son Tycho until he's 18 months old.
Liquid love, isn't it, baby?
Are chemicals behind bigger breasts, early puberty, or Joe Moda's gynecomastia? The reports are coming in, but the jury is staying out. Since 2000, there have been over 4,000 papers written on potentially hormone-disrupting chemicals. But there's still no consensus.
I can't say with absolute certainty that any of those levels are dangerous. What I can say is that they are levels that we're all exposed to because they are pretty much the same levels as everybody in Australia.
Breasts have always fascinated humanity. Now, after centuries of contemplation and worship, it seems they may have one more role to play. A secret role, as messengers of environmental and biological change. Like the canary in the coal mine, they just might be a living early warning system.
If we know how to look at them, they can show us, yes, in fact, the things that we do to our planet end up showing up. And our breasts mirror the world around us, but we don't tend to see them that way.
We're learning more about our environment and all the different exposures because of what we're finding out about breasts. I don't think that's what we ever expected breasts would be telling us.
These remarkable organs connect us, mother to child, human to world. More than ever, we need to understand what's happening to them. Because to understand them is to understand ourselves.